Greetings, Empresses. Welcome back to Conversations with my mother. This is my mother, Dr. Betty Burston.
And this is my daughter, Dr. Triya.
So today's webisode is called I Got Work to Do, Honey. And we are going to cover two things. First, we are going to take a step back to our last webisode and get back into that conversation of finances. And then we're going to go forward and talk about, well, what if you already have a job and what are some ways that you can maximize your power within the workplace? So, Mommy, let's go ahead and get started. Now, one of the things that you were saying last week is that it's important for us as women to have multiple streams of income.
Yes.
And you were saying that you were encouraging us to explore entrepreneurship as a way of doing that.
One way.
One way of doing that. Now, do we need to clarify? Because I think some of our viewers got the idea that you were saying don't work a day job, just go into entrepreneurship. So do you want to clarify that for us?
No, absolutely not. I was not saying that. Last week we talked about the fact that it's important for us as women to make money invisible in our lives. And we said that one way to do that is by having enough money for our needs, which doesn't mean that we waste it just because we have enough for our needs. We still have to use it strategically. And we mentioned that there are multiple ways of earning income. For example, we said that you can have rents and royalties, which is income from a fixed resource, a novel that you get royalties from, a song that you get royalties from, some real estate you own that you get rents from. We also mentioned that it's important to have money from financial resources, such as the ownership of stock, the ownership of bonds. I don't like bonds personally. The ownership of mutual funds.
Yeah.
We also talked about the fact that you can have profit income, which you get from entrepreneurship. But it's very critical, these are not alternative streams. We're saying to have income from all those streams. Someone in the household, either you or your husband-to-be, or those of you who want to get married, needs to have income from labor. And it could be one or it could be both of you. But by having income from all of these multiple sources, it means if one is gone, there's income still coming into the household.
Okay. Now, let's say, for example, with today's economy, let's say that we have some of our viewers who aren't in the workplace or don't have a job. What advice would you give to them?
Well, first of all, we have a tendency to see the glass as being half full half empty instead of half full, because the unemployment rate is approximately 10%. What that means is that 90% of people who are labor market participants are working. And it's interesting because that's one of the factors that has created such a backlash against the current presidency, is that people really don't understand the economics, so they really don't see what is taking place. So, but let's say that we do have some women who are part of that 10% who are unemployed. And I also should mention that for women who have a college degree, the unemployment rate right now is only 4%. And before the current economic downturn, it was only 2%. But let's say that for those women who don't have a job yet, so your question to me is, what should they do? How should they go about it?
Yeah.
The first thing that's very important to realize is that in one's lifetime, the average person who works in the labor market is going to be unemployed. Well, they're going to change jobs 11 times, which means in between they can either be what we call frictionally unemployed, which means they're just changing jobs, so they're only unemployed for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Or they could be structurally unemployed, which means jobs are there, but they don't fit the ones that are there necessarily. So there are different types of unemployment. But independently of the type of unemployment, one of the things that's very critical for us as women is to be able to shift occupations and shift jobs. As you know, I've been trying to get you have a doctorate, but I've been trying to get you to get a master's in public health. But you don't have to get degrees. I don't want you to, in order for you to get a job.
Because school isn't for everyone,
Right.
I strongly believe.
Let's take a woman who has a high school diploma, who's unemployed. There's 4 types of skills that can help you move in and out of different types of positions. One of those skills is good, strong reading skills. If you can read, you can get at almost any type of job because you can become a statistician. Did you know that in the state of Virginia, you can study and pass the bar exam and you will be a lawyer?
Without having a prior high school or college degree?
If you can pass the bar, you can become a lawyer just by reading.
Really? So they don't have to go to law school?
No, there are other states where this is true also. So there are so many areas that are based upon skills as opposed to being based upon educational credentials. So one of the things we talked last week about the fact that we tend to not operate on our production possibility curve. That is, we underutilize our intellect and all of those things. So a woman who's unemployed, let's say your last job was as a secretary. When you apply, administrative assistant, when you apply for that job as an administrative assistant, don't just send a little one-page resume. Everything you've done in the past, detail it and transform it into a V-tape. Then do something else.
And a personalized cover letter, which you taught me at a very young age.
Right, but now I go beyond a personalized cover letter. Now what I recommend you do is to give them a little 2-page proposal that tells them how you are going to approach that job. Nobody else who's applying for an administrative assistant job is going to do that. Also study the company. Any company you work for, you intended to work, considering working for, you should know the entire history of it. Go on the internet, find out who the president is, find out when they started, find out what is taking place with their balance sheets. And when you write this 2-page paper, you want to show that you know who they are. In that 2-page paper, as an administrative assistant, get a thesaurus and write it just the way it flows first. Then begin replacing words so that you end up having writing that has the level of sophistication of the president of the company. Nobody can keep you from doing those things.
And I think you're kind of getting into the next part of our conversation, which is, for those of you that are already in the workplace, how do we maximize our strengths in the workplace? And one of the things, I want to go ahead and start with one of our readings for this, okay? Because I realize this conversation may be a bit overwhelming for some of us. And this book is one of my favorite books. It's called The War of Art. And it's just wonderful for people who are just trying to push the boundaries in anything that they do. So I'm going to go ahead and read a selection. Fear is good. Like self-doubt, fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do. And then he goes on to say, the professional tackles the project that will make him stretch. He takes on the assignment that will bear him into uncharted waters, compel him to explore unconscious parts of himself. Is he scared? Hell yes, he's petrified. So kind of going into, and ladies, I have to say, you know, Mommy and I don't always agree on everything, but the one area where I never question her recommendations is with the area of work. So let's go ahead and get into this. So we're talking about those of you that are in the workplace. Let's start off with the first question, which is, how do we keep our edge? And I think you started going into that a little bit. How do we keep our edge in the workplace?
The first thing when you talk about how do you keep your edge, it's a competitive statement. And I don't believe in competing. What I believe is that you always do the very, very best that you can do. If you're doing the best, you can't do better, and you're not going to do worse, so you don't have to worry about, quote, competing. But one of the first things, in order to, when you're in your job, once you get this job, throw away your job description. Whatever is needed, observe the company, you've studied it. Everything that needs to be done that you can do, do it. Don't be offended to get a cup of coffee for the boss, and not as a kiss-up, simply to make the workplace a nice, nurturing environment. Stay, if you are supposed to work 8 hours, work 12 hours instead. You know, you go in with the wonderful attitude that I thank you, God, for giving me this job. And I want to do the very best that I can to make this organization the greatest organization in the world. I want to do, there's something that I used to say to you guys when you were young, which says, I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I must never I must never refuse to do the something that I can do. And so that's what we have to do in the workplace.
Okay, so one of the other things I wanted to ask you was related to, so when let's say we're doing all these amazing things at work, and of course, you know, your light is shining and you get recognition, and when your light is shining, unfortunately, there's the big H word, ladies, and what is it? How do we deal, and I don't like to use that term, but how do we deal with people who feel envy or resentment because we're shining our light and we are coming up with all of these innovative ideas in the workplace?
We diffuse it.
How do we do that?
One of the things, when we do all the things in the workplace, we have to remain very humble, and we have to act and behave with humility. And many people won't know all of the things we're doing if we demonstrate humility, do you see? And the other thing is, even though we may work 12 hours and they're working 8, we have to show absolute respect to our coworkers. And there are some other things, and we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Well, there's something important though, because I know one thing you used to tell me when I would go into my meetings, you would say, only talk when there's something really important to say.
Exactly.
Why?
Because we remember the theme throughout these discussions is how much power we as women have. And when you have power, if you think, a laser can burn you. So we can burn people. So we have to control our lasers. It's not important, so, you know, for us to let other people see how strong we are as women. So if we go to a meeting, we talk as little as possible. You know, let other people have the floor. And if we do ask something, it has to be powerful and something that really, a question that has to be asked. And now that's going to happen because many times, you know, when you read a lot, as women of power, we're going to be able to see some things that are not being said. So as I said, we have to choose our battles, so we have to control that laser. So only when it's necessary, you know, do we even say anything. And then if we say something one time.
Okay. All right, and the last thing I want to ask you is about this whole idea of, you said don't get too personal, but be personable. Right. Why is that important? And we're going to wrap it up.
Okay. Because see, part of the thing when we talked about relationships with our, you know, mates, or whether it's with our bosses or with our coworkers, we want to be loving, but you don't need to intrude into people's lives, you see. So you want to be Miss Sunshine, who comes into the workplace, the most pleasant person there. But stay away. When you begin getting very personal, you know, that's when the gossip begins, all of those things. You know, listen to people and talk to them, and be very nice, and be sweet and gentle.
Well, ladies, this has been another interesting conversation, and we want to hear your insights. You can email us at, well, actually go to our website, www.conversationswithmymother.org, or you can also email us on conversationswithmymother@gmail.com. You all have a blessed day, Empresses. We love you, and we will talk to you soon. Mwah.